Well, okay, we'll go ahead and begin the meeting tonight. We have determined that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent because of the current COVID-19 pandemic disaster and associated building restrictions. We can't get in, so public access to the meeting is being provided remotely, online, or by phone. And if any public comments were submitted before the meeting to Gina, we'll hear about it. And Tammy, go ahead and do the roll call vote.
I will. Mr. Sherwood.
Here.
Mr. Gross.
Here.
Mr. Laswell.
Here.
Mrs. Hanks.
Here.
All right, we have a quorum. Gina, are you aware of any public participation?
I do. There's nobody in the waiting room, and I received no emails for public participation.
Okay. All right, we'll move along to the agenda review. Any modifications to tonight's meeting by anybody? Okay. Don't hear any, so we'll move along to the consent agenda. The approval of the minutes of the September 28th regular meeting and the approval of the bills. And we need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Any comments by anybody? All right. Tammy, go ahead and do the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Sherwood.
Yes?
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mr. Laswell.
Yes.
And Mrs. Hanks.
Yes.
And we're going to need a secretary pro tem because Colleen's not here.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'll
Well,
do it.
Was that Mark?
I'll do it.
thank
just
you,
have to
Mark, for
point me.
stepping up
Yeah.
to the plate.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along to the treasurer's report, and I don't see a treasurer.
Ron is not with us this evening, but I don't believe he would have had anything to report.
Okay. Well, then we'll move right along to the director's report. And Gina, it's all yours.
Thank you. In my packet was your director's report per usual, and I'm happy to answer any questions about what you read in there. A couple more things to add. Just shy of 3,000 people came through the doors since the last time we met. We're down a little bit as far as an average week, down to about 30 people or so from the previous 4 weeks, but we still have about 19 people here in the hour. I would consider it just holding steady. We received our 2021 health insurance information. Tammy and I will be reviewing it. We have a meeting with Winter Insurance here later this week, or Unland Companies, I guess. As of right now, from what they sent us, our current plans have a little bit of small benefit changes, but we'll learn more about that in our meeting next week. We did receive word today that Rails is revising their quarantine procedures down to 72 hours, so down to 3 days versus the current 7 days. This is following the 5th round of the Realm study, a research literature review, and a review by the Oregon Department of Health. So our library will follow suit. Starting tomorrow, we'll start reducing quarantine down to 3 days. That news is all of 3 hours old. So, did you have any questions for my director's report?
Were there any incidents for last month?
No, there were not.
Didn't have a list, but I didn't know.
I did not have anything for an incident log last month.
Okay. All right. Well, we can go right along to the communications and correspondence, library statistics.
Statistics were in your packet, per usual. I'm flipping to them now, excuse me. As you can imagine, statistics are all kinds of wonky based on our current situation. CERC continues to climb compared to last month. I mean, we're still down about 32% over last year, but considering 2 months ago we were down like 50%, it's going the right direction. Other than that, though, it's kind of hard to compare statistics year to year when this year is absolutely nothing like last year. So, were there any questions from the statistics from the board?
No.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. And we can go to the next item, discussion item, Public Library per capita grant requirements standards for Illinois Public Libraries and chapters 3 to 8. If everybody had a chance to read, and I see you have some bullet points.
I did.
Gina?
I pulled out a few bullet points just to speak to those chapters, those 6 chapters. And so chapter 3 was personnel. We talked about, personnel policies and staffing levels and things like that. So I shared with you that we introduced our new employee handbook last year. So we are quite current on that. As far as staffing levels as defined by the standards, we're kind of between that growing and established. That doesn't necessarily surprise me. We've been in this building 7 years, but when we moved in, we grew quite a bit. So at this point, it said to reach the fully established staffing level, we'd have to add about 3 additional FTE. I don't necessarily know that that is in the cards right now. But again, these are just guidelines. There's no requirement to be at established or anything like that. Let's see here. We implemented our compensation structure last year. Do we want to go this chapter by chapter, and I'll ask at the end of each chapter if the board had questions or comments, or do you want me to just keep going and then go back all at once?
I don't think you need to go over each item that you.
Gary says move along.
Okay. Yeah.
I saw the hand motion.
We have our time limit.
I don't know. Chapter 4 was about access. I mean, we have a modern, we're very accessible as far as facilities go. We have broad and convenient hours that meet the established level when using our regular, quote, normal hours, not our pandemic hours. Chapter 5 is about building infrastructure and maintenance. Again, we're very fortunate to be sitting in a 7-year-old building, so we don't have a ton to do there. We have made additional fiscally sound and environmentally friendly features like the LED. We are keeping an eye on longer term capital projects. Chapter 6, safety. This disaster plan is still in review and revision. We've been, like, as I said, I've been dealing with an actual disaster this year. And so, and let's see here. Chapter 7, collection management. We do kind of meet the standards as far as percentage of budget spent on collections. We have long been an active borrower and lender in interlibrary loan sharing consortia. And we talked about material selection policy last month as far as adding it to kind of things that we want to look at because of reviewing these standards. Chapter 8 was very similar as far as system member responsibilities and resource sharing. Fondulac takes a very active role in the consortia that we belong in, whether it be Rails or RSA. We take advantage of statewide opportunities through the state library, and we always meet or exceed eligibility requirements for system membership or grant applications. So those are the bullet points I pulled out for those chapters. You're welcome to ask any questions you would like from those chapters, or if there's anything you'd like me to review.
I did have one question. I did have a really, well, you already pulled the bullet point out, but I noticed the 12% in chapter 7. That was the only thing that I was going to ask you about had you not brought it up, but you did. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Is that is 12% in the industry of library, is that a norm?
Well, that was the standard that they pulled out there. Hold on just a second here. Need to see that one's out.
We're talking like for books, we're talking like for newspapers and
books, electronic materials, newspapers, audiovisual equipment, those kind of things. I'm trying to see it. Collection Management Standard 1. The library spends a minimum of 8 to 12% of its operating budget on materials for patrons. And then it says, for the purposes of calculating spending on materials, refer to Appendix I. And that's why I said rough math, because if I just pulled out things like our collection budget, our database budget, and our like RSA consortia fees and stuff like that, it met the 12% right there. So I didn't worry about pulling out like money that we spend on library cards or barcodes or staffing to process the books. That would honestly be a little more complicated. And since we met the 12%, I just let it be. So yeah, I mean, that's things like databases, audiovisual, magazines, newspapers, books, ebooks, any of like our online, like Mango online learning, language learning, things like that, as well as the cost that like OCLC costs. OCLC is kind of have our things put into the national catalog, RSA fees to participate, have those cataloging things together. So we met at least the 12% just from those items.
All right, thank you. That's all, the only thing I noticed or wanted to ask. Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I noticed it said in here your Narcan had expired. You're trying to get it replaced.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Who have you been going through?
I've been trying. I started with HSC because that's who we originally gave it to. I tried contacting through them for several months, gave up hope, went on to Jolt, have tried them on and off for several months, gave up hope, tried EPFB, who sent me back to Jolt. 2 Fridays ago, I got them to answer the phone, and they took a message for someone to call me back. So the best I've gotten is someone to answer the phone.
I know people at Jolt, so I can
maybe you can help, because this has been going on since before we went home in March.
Okay.
I've tried
what type of Narcan are we using right now? Is it just the
currently
injectable, or is it?
I took it.
What did you have?
Originally from HSC, they had actually given us the nasal Narcan.
Okay.
Which I think, if we had our druthers, we'd prefer.
Right.
That being said, when I spoke to Jolt last time, they said they don't distribute that anymore, and so it would be the syringe based. And I said, well, at this point, I've been trying for so long, I'll take about anything. My concern with that is we're only trained on the nasal. We're not trained on the injection, in which case I was hoping maybe they could, I don't know, point us in the direction of instruction.
At least with the injection, you just need to get it into a muscle. It doesn't have to go into a vein or anything like that.
Yeah.
So.
I did find online where Narcan will send a public library 1, which we usually keep 2. We usually keep them in our AED boxes, 1 on each floor. But Narcan, like the pharmaceutical company that makes Narcan, will send public libraries 1. I just figured that out like a week or 2 ago, and it's been sitting there because I sent them a message and I have to have a prescription for it.
Right, and Jolt can give you a standing script for it.
Okay.
I'll contact the director.
Okay.
If I know her, and get you taken care of.
Yeah, it's been a struggle, but I continue to every couple weeks kind of pick it up and try again.
Okay.
So
I'll see what I can do to help.
In the meantime, we're very fortunate. We are not terribly far from our emergency responders, and that's always obviously our first go-to anyway is 911. So
right.
But I keep trying.
Well, I'll see what I can help.
Okay. That's a good question. Actually, I had thought about that. Does Narcan, when you said it expired like we're out, or it has a shelf life?
It had a shelf life. It had a date on it. And I wasn't sure, like, I'm obviously not a medical professional. And my initial thought was, well, if you give Narcan to someone who doesn't need Narcan, it doesn't hurt them. So can expired Narcan actually hurt somebody? But I also didn't figure it was probably good from a legal liability standpoint to be administering expired medicine to anyone. So
yeah, from our Narcan training, I don't believe it will hurt them. It will just not be as effective.
Yeah. So I put it in the drug drop box down in front of the fire department. But we're ready. So it's just been something I've kind of been chiseling away at, hoping. Any help you can provide, Mark, I would love that.
I will see what I can do.
Thank you. Other questions?
Gina, what do we do? So, okay, we've just discussed how will this affect what we do, the next step?
The next step. So the most immediate next step is you get to do the rest of the chapters for next month. After that, I would say come January, I've been kind of keeping a list of some of the things we talked about last month. Obviously, from this list, I do know, the disaster plan is something I still need to be working on. The material selection policy. I don't know if there was anything out of those chapters that you threw up big flags for you that you feel like, oh, this is somewhere we want to go, or a standard that we're absolutely not meeting, and I can add it to my list for then next year that we can kind of start working our way through those.
Okay. All right.
But from my point of view, I guess there wasn't a ton in those chapters that we didn't we're surprised to add to the list. The disaster plan's already on the list. The material selection policy review is already on the list from last time. So if the board has other things that from those chapters that they feel strongly about addressing soon, please let me know.
Okay. All right, that was a good discussion. We'll move along to the action items, and we only have one this month. Action item 2020-1001, the approval and acceptance of the fiscal year 2020 audit. And we need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
And second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Gina, any discussion?
No, earlier on October 13th, I sent the final audit to all the board members just because it's kind of huge, and I felt like it would also give you longer time to review it. But there wasn't any changes from the draft that you had received the month before. This is just kind of a formality as far as accepting the audit.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Mr. Sherwood.
And Tammy?
Mr. Sherwood.
Aye.
Mr. Gross.
Aye.
Mr. Laswell.
Aye.
Mrs. Hanks.
Aye.
All right. Looks like motion carried.
Mark, I'll have something I need you to sign as the pro tem.
All right. When do you want me to?
If you want to just give me a call, come through the drive-through one day, I'll hand it out to you, whatever is easiest.
I can do that tomorrow if you'll have it ready tomorrow. Or
I
can
will
wait
have it ready. I just have to
Okay.
reprint it and put Secretary Pro Tem on it.
Okay, I can do that. I'll stop by tomorrow.
Okay, just text me and or call me when you get here, whatever.
Okay.
And just as a heads up, so everyone knows, Alan and Ron will be stopping by tomorrow to sign bills and checks. So.
Okay. Any other closing comments by anybody? Looks like our next meeting is actually going to be the last one of the year, November 30th at 6 o'clock at the Civic Plaza. So we all get to, hopefully, can all make it. So if no further ado, we need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make that motion.
And second?
I'll second.
All right. Need a roll call vote?
Mr. Sherwood.
Yes?
Mr. Gross.
Yes.
Mr. Laswell.
Yes.
Mrs. Hanks.
Yes.
All right, motion carried. Looks like our meeting is officially over. And sorry, Mark, we didn't.
That's okay.